All right, Catherine, good Wednesday morning to you. Thank you for being up early. We have to cover
Good
three
morning.
things: fondu, DIY,
Mhm.
and Michael Cohen, in that order. First of all,
Okay.
um, I've got a daughter with four children, and we're going to do a parenting then and now podcast because I would never have allowed my children near a fondue pot. But you are
hmm
apparently oblivious to the dangers thereof.
No, I'm not oblivious to the dangers thereof. I'm just a fun mom, Hugh. That's what I do. I do things that are like maybe slightly inadvisable with four children, but I do them when my husband is away because he'll get stressed out by them. So I just do it then. That's my plan.
Steve and I are completely simpatico about children and sharp objects and fondue pots. So that number two, you're a DIY. Vic pretended not
Mhm.
to know that, but I know him. It's a tribe of people that I hate. My son-in-law is a DIY. My father-in-law of my son is a DIY. I am an NDIY. Never do it yourself. When did you develop DIY skills? Did you learn from your parents?
Yes, this is something I inherited from my parents, and like them, I am an 85% DIYer, which means whatever project you're doing, when you're almost done, you just stall out and that's where it stays. That's another
Now,
thing my
my
husband
daughter
does
in
not
law is a DIYer too, but she does finish the job, wainscoting, things like that, things I don't understand. Did you watch Bill Cosby reruns ever?
well, I watched it in real time because I'm an old lady.
Okay, so remember when he put on the tool belt?
Yes.
Yeah, that's me. If I ever put
Okay.
on the tool belt, we don't have a tool belt, but well, let's
Yeah.
get to the real news. And I wish I had your sound effect, I would play it. Michael Cohen. Now,
Mhm.
tell me your thoughts on the Trump trial. Just hold forth, because I haven't heard you hold forth on the Trump trial.
Yeah, so I think the Trump trial was one of these things where again, I felt like this was a misguided attempt to, Wile E. Coyote this roadrunner, and they're always like, "We got him now," and I was like, "I'm not sure about that, guys." And I thought it was irresponsible. I've followed Alvin Bragg and his tendency to do irresponsible things, but I think as we're getting toward the end of this trial and during it, it has become even more clear how awful what they're doing is, and how often Trump is exactly right about what they're doing to him. It is political. It is nonsense. It is trumped up. Trumped up. The judge is being insanely unfair to him, particularly not allowing former FEC chairman Brad Smith to testify on FEC violations and whether they exist, since he's the guy who's literally written all the books on FEC law and campaign finance law, which is quite complicated. Um, the fact that we don't have the crime for which he's supposed to be convicted, like the
That's the number
secondary
one
crime.
problem. You're
It's
supposed to
wild.
know what you're charged with in America, and he has not had that articulated in the indictment. It
Yeah.
is. You're a layperson. I listen to Andy McCarthy, who's a criminal prosecutor, and Professor Turley, of
Yeah.
course. But lay people, do you think most Americans get it that this was a fix? It's a sham. It's a show trial. Do you think most get it?
So I don't think that they're into the details, but I do think that people are either they're not paying attention enough that they don't really care, or this baked into the pie, or uh, because they're not paying attention, they basically think, oh, this is the same thing they always try to do to him. I believe I saw a Fox News poll where the percentage of people who think the legal system is being unfair to him went up over the past couple of weeks. I think you've seen in battleground states, especially in that New York Times poll, that his support has gone up during the time that this trial is happening. So that seems to show that it's not exactly what they hoped would have happened here.
Now, we also got news this morning that President Biden's approval rating in the Reuters Ipsos poll has dipped down to a new low of 36%. His response, of course, is release the oil reserves, which he did yesterday. He ordered the strategic petroleum reserves released. Do you think there's anything he can possibly do? I think the cake is so baked on Joe Biden. Mary Catherine, what do you think?
Well, I think you look at this candidate and you ask yourself, is this a man who can change the trajectory of a race in a positive way? Does he have the energy to do that? Does he have sort of any innovative thinking to do that? I think the announcement of a debate was an attempt at that, but it comes with such risks because, as you see, he's giving scripted speeches in which he claims that Hersh Goldberg Poland, the most famous of the hostages still in Gaza, is with him tonight in the room, right? Like these are, by the way, President Empathy never showed up to this situation. And I just think that it is completely out of character for this to be a guy who could change the momentum in a race. I saw that you retweeted the New Hampshire paper covering his event in New Hampshire, and woo, the excitement in that
Yeah.
room of 12 people.
Do you think that is prevalent among Democrats across the country? They know he can't be president for 4 more years, right? They know that. So I don't think he's going to be
Yeah.
their nominee because you can't look at him and say, "Oh yeah, he's our guy." You just can't.
No, I think many of them voted for him the first time, thinking that they weren't really making an 8-year deal, right? Like when you took him on the first time, you're like, okay, he's an old guy, but he's going to be sort of a steady force. And then it turns out, okay, that wasn't the case, and he's much older now cognitively than he was 4 years ago. So I think people are generally disappointed.
Much older.